Picture a valley so small you could throw a rock across it and hit your neighbor in the back of the head, which, by the way, happens constantly in this story, so keep that image handy. There is one path, one single, dusty, winding path that goes from the river to the caves, from the caves to the berry bushes, and from the berry bushes back to the river again. For years, this has worked out fine, mostly because nobody in this valley has ever needed to be anywhere in a hurry. Time does not exist yet. Neither do schedules, deadlines, or the concept of "I'm running late." Everybody just kind of shows up whenever, and that has been perfectly acceptable. Until today. Today, for reasons nobody can quite explain, everybody in the valley has decided they need to use the path at the exact same moment. A wide caveman is dragging a log the size of a small boat toward the caves. Coming the other direction, a scrawny caveman is hauling a fish twice his body weight, walking backward because that is somehow easier for him. Behind the fish guy, 3 children are chasing a beetle. Behind the beetle, a wild boar is chasing the children, though nobody has noticed this yet. And squeezed in the middle of all of it, an elderly caveman is trying to carry a stack of flat rocks he plans to use as plates, moving at the speed of a very confused tortoise. None of these people can see each other. The path curves, the bushes are tall, and so, at the narrowest point in the entire valley, physics does what physics does best. Everybody arrives at once. The log guy does not stop, the fish guy does not stop, the kids do not stop. The boar absolutely does not stop. The old man with his rock plates gets caught directly in the middle, and in one glorious slow-motion instant, log meets fish meets children meets boar meets a very unfortunate stack of stone dinnerware. The sound this produces is somewhere between a landslide and a very angry drum solo. Rock plates go flying like the world's least aerodynamic frisbees. The fish, now airborne, briefly becomes a projectile weapon. The boar, startled beyond belief, launches sideways into the log, which launches sideways into a bush, which launches a very confused bird into the sky, who was just trying to have a nice day. When the dust settles, 5 cavemen, 1 boar, 1 fish, and several dozen shattered rock plates are all tangled together in a heap in the middle of the path. Nobody moves for a solid 10 seconds. Then, slowly, painfully, they begin untangling themselves, giving each other looks that could curdle milk, if milk existed yet, which it does not. This is not a one-time thing. This happens constantly, every single day, multiple times a day. This exact scenario plays out with slightly different props and slightly different victims. Sometimes it's 2 guys carrying opposite ends of a mammoth tusk who meet head-on and get stuck like a very poorly designed puzzle. Sometimes it's a woman carrying a basket of berries who gets flattened by a group of hunters jogging home triumphantly with a dead animal slung between them, not looking where they're going because they're too busy celebrating. Nobody in this valley has ever thought to ask why this keeps happening. They just accept it, dust themselves off, mutter something that in caveman probably translates to a fairly rude word, and continue on with their day. Log, or fish, or rock plates be darned. Our story really kicks off with one particular caveman we'll call the unlucky one, mostly because bad things happen to him with suspicious regularity, and today is shaping up to be no exception. The unlucky one wakes up in a perfectly fine mood. He stretches, he yawns, he steps outside his cave, takes a deep breath of fresh morning air, and within 4 seconds gets absolutely obliterated by a caveman sprinting past, carrying an entire dead antelope on his shoulders. The unlucky one goes down like a tree in a storm. The antelope guy does not even notice, does not even slow down, just keeps sprinting toward the caves like he's got somewhere very important to be, which, to be fair, he probably does. The unlucky one lies there for a moment, staring up at the sky, wondering what he did in a previous life to deserve this. Then he gets up, dusts himself off, and decides that today, of all days, he is going to figure out why this keeps happening to him and, more importantly, how to make it stop. He walks down to the path and simply stands there, watching, just observing. This is already a revolutionary act in a world where nobody has ever stopped to think about anything before doing it. What he sees is chaos, pure, uncut, unfiltered chaos. People walking in every possible direction with zero awareness of anyone else. Some walking fast, some walking slow, some stopping in the exact middle of the path to have long, pointless conversations using grunts and hand gestures, completely blocking traffic for everyone behind them. Every few minutes, a collision. Every few minutes, someone falls, something breaks, someone gets yelled at in caveman, which mostly consists of the same 3 sounds rearranged in slightly different orders depending on how angry you are. The unlucky one scratches his head. There has to be a better way. He just does not know what it is yet. His first idea, and we have to give him credit for effort here even though the execution leaves quite a bit to be desired, is drawing a line down the middle of the path with a stick. His logic, and it is not bad logic honestly, is that if people walking one direction stay on one side of the line and people walking the other direction stay on the other side, nobody will crash into each other anymore. He spends a solid 20 minutes dragging his stick through the dirt, creating a beautifully straight, perfectly centered line running the entire length of the path. He stands back, admires his work, and feels a small swell of pride. This, he thinks, is going to change everything. The first caveman to walk by does not notice the line at all, steps right over it without a second thought, walking wherever he pleases. Same as always. The unlucky one watches this happen with growing dismay. He tries waving at the guy, pointing at the line, making increasingly elaborate hand gestures trying to explain the concept of lanes. The guy just stares at him blankly, shrugs, and continues on his way, completely unbothered. The second caveman to walk by actually does notice the line, but interprets it as some kind of decoration, and proceeds to carefully walk along the line itself like it's a balance beam, arms out for stability, taking his sweet time, blocking the entire path for everyone behind him who now cannot get past, because he's using the very thing meant to divide traffic as his own personal tightrope. By this point, a small crowd has gathered behind the balance beam guy, growing increasingly impatient, and the unlucky one realizes with a sinking feeling that his brilliant line idea has made things measurably worse. The line experiment is officially, spectacularly a failure, and it takes approximately 4 minutes for the next multi-caveman pile-up to occur directly on top of his beautiful, ignored line, smearing it into the dirt in the process. Undeterred, because apparently our hero has the persistence of a mammoth and the memory of someone who has recently been hit by one, he tries idea number 2. If a simple line will not work, perhaps a physical barrier will do the trick. He starts collecting rocks, medium-sized ones, and begins placing them in a row down the center of the path, creating an actual, tangible divider that people cannot simply ignore or misuse as a walking surface. This takes him considerably longer than the line did, because rocks, unlike lines drawn with a stick, do not agree to be moved quickly or efficiently. He is sweating, he is grunting, he is dropping rocks on his own feet at least twice, and by the time he finishes, the sun has moved noticeably across the sky. But he has done it. A genuine rock barrier stretching the length of the path, dividing it cleanly into 2 sides. He steps back, wipes his brow, and waits for the results to roll in. The results are not what he was hoping for. The very first person to encounter the rock barrier is a caveman carrying a large woven basket on his head, both hands occupied, vision partially blocked by said basket. He does not see the rocks. He trips directly over the first one, sending the entire barrier into a chain reaction of tumbling stones, and goes sprawling, face first into the dirt, basket contents scattering everywhere. Berries roll in every direction. The caveman, furious, sits up, looks directly at the unlucky one, who is standing nearby with a guilty expression, and gives him a look that requires no translation whatsoever. The second person to encounter the now partially collapsed rock barrier decides, in a stroke, of what he clearly believes is genius, that the rocks make excellent seating, and simply sits down on the barrier to rest, blocking the path just as effectively as the balance beam guy did earlier. Except now he's also eating one of the spilled berries he found on the ground, completely content with his new furniture. Within the hour, the entire rock barrier has either been kicked apart, sat upon, or repurposed as ammunition by children who have discovered that the medium-sized rocks are extremely satisfying to throw at each other. The unlucky one watches his second grand invention crumble into complete uselessness and slumps down onto a nearby log with the weary posture of a man who is beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, this problem is bigger than he initially thought. This is usually the part of the story where our hero gives up entirely, but fortunately for everyone involved, including the audience who would very much like this video to have an ending, help arrives in an unexpected form. Enter the second main character of our tale, a caveman who is, to put it delicately, not known for his physical prowess or hunting ability, but who has on more than one occasion demonstrated a knack for thinking about problems sideways instead of head-on. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. Let's call him the clever one. The clever one has been watching the unlucky one's entire saga from a distance, first with mild amusement, then with growing interest, and finally with the dawning realization that he might actually have an idea worth trying. The clever one's breakthrough comes from an unlikely source: watching a flock of birds. He notices that when birds fly in large groups, they do not constantly crash into each other despite moving at high speed in tight formation. They seem to have some kind of unspoken agreement about who goes where. He watches this for a long while, chewing on a piece of grass, brain visibly working overtime, until eventually a small light bulb, metaphorically speaking, because actual light bulbs are several thousand years away, goes off in his head. The problem, he realizes, has nothing to do with the path itself. Lines and rocks cannot fix behavior. The real issue is that nobody has any way of knowing what anyone else is planning to do until it is far too late to do anything about it. What this valley actually needs is a signal, a way for people to communicate intention before a collision happens rather than during one. He approaches the unlucky one, who is still sitting on his log, looking thoroughly defeated, and through a series of increasingly enthusiastic gestures, manages to convey his idea. It takes a while. There is a lot of pointing at birds, a lot of arm flapping, and at one point what appears to be an interpretive dance depicting two cavemen narrowly avoiding each other. But eventually the unlucky one's face lights up with understanding, and the two of them get to work. Their first attempt at a signaling system is, in true originalis fashion, wonderfully impractical. The clever one suggests that everyone should shout a specific sound before entering the path, so others know someone is coming. They test this immediately. The clever one stands at one end of the path and lets out an enormous, ear-splitting holler before stepping forward. The problem becomes apparent almost instantly. Everyone in the valley starts shouting before entering the path, all the time, constantly, which means the valley is now filled with a continuous, overlapping chorus of hollering that makes it completely impossible to tell one warning shout from another. It is louder, more chaotic, and honestly worse for everyone's ears than the collisions ever were. A group of birds, the same ones that inspired this whole endeavor, take one look at the noise below and relocate to a quieter valley several hills over, thoroughly unimpressed with how their peaceful flying patterns have been repurposed into this mess. Attempt number 1, a resounding failure, and now everyone has a headache. The clever one, not one to be discouraged easily, goes back to the drawing board, or, in this case, back to sitting under a tree chewing grass and staring intently at nothing in particular. It's during this session of what can only be described as caveman deep thought that inspiration strikes a second time, and this time, it actually sticks. What if, instead of noise, which clearly does not scale well in a valley full of people who apparently love the sound of their own voice, the signal was visual? Something you could see from a distance. That meant one simple thing and that everyone could agree on. He picks up a long, straight stick, holds it upright, and has an idea so simple it borders on embarrassing that nobody thought of it sooner. A raised stick means stop. No stick or a lowered stick means go. He recruits the unlucky one to be the very first traffic guard in recorded, or rather unrecorded, history. The plan is simple. The unlucky one will stand at the narrowest, most dangerous point in the path, the exact spot where the original epic collision happened at the start of our story, and hold his stick either up or down depending on who needs to go through. The system works beautifully for approximately 6 minutes. Then, the unlucky one gets bored. This is frankly an understandable and deeply relatable problem. Standing in one spot holding a stick up and down all day is not exactly thrilling work, and our hero's attention span, much like most cavemen's, is not built for repetitive tasks. Within 10 minutes of starting his new job, he's distracted by a butterfly. Within 15 minutes, he's poking at an interesting-looking bug with his stick, completely forgetting its intended purpose. Within 20 minutes, he has fallen asleep standing up, stick drooping limply at his side, technically signaling go to absolutely everyone regardless of which direction they're coming from. This predictably results in another massive collision, possibly the biggest one yet, involving no fewer than 7 cavemen, 2 children, a very startled turtle who happened to be crossing at exactly the wrong moment, and, in a bit of poetic irony, the very same stack of rock plates from the beginning of our story, which the elderly caveman has apparently attempted to carry across the path yet again, having learned absolutely nothing from his previous experience. The unlucky one wakes up from his impromptu nap directly in the middle of this new disaster, stick still in hand, utterly confused about how he ended up at the bottom of a caveman pile again. The clever one, watching from nearby, face palms so hard he nearly knocks himself over. Back to the drawing board it is. This time, the clever one realizes the flaw is not the signal itself, which genuinely worked when it was being used correctly, but relying on one easily distracted individual to maintain it constantly. What they need is a signal that does not require anyone standing there at all. Something permanent, something that works even when nobody is paying attention to it. He looks around the immediate area for inspiration and his eyes land on a large, flat rock near the path's edge. An idea begins to form, and this time, he decides to enlist a bit of help from an unexpected third party. The valley's resident artist, a caveman who spends most of his time drawing on cave walls, depicting hunts, animals, and the occasional suspiciously accurate caricature of his neighbors that has caused more than one argument. The plan: paint symbols directly onto rocks and place them at key points along the path. One symbol to indicate which direction has priority. One symbol to indicate a person should wait. It is in essence the birth of the road sign, though nobody in this valley has any concept of how significant this moment actually is. They are just trying to stop getting flattened by fish and antelope carcasses on a daily basis. The artist caveman gets to work immediately, clearly thrilled to have an actual purpose beyond decorating cave walls that people only look at occasionally. He paints a simple hand shape on one rock, palm facing outward, universally understood even in a world with very few universal understandings, to mean stop, or at least wait a moment. On another rock, he paints an arrow, a simple straight line with a triangle at the end, pointing in the direction that currently has the right-of-way. These rocks get placed at the critical junction point, replacing both the failed line and the failed barrier from earlier attempts. There is a brief moment of collective holding of breath, metaphorically speaking, as the unlucky one and the clever one wait to see if this new system will fare any better than their previous ones. The first test comes almost immediately, in the form of two cavemen approaching the junction from opposite directions, exactly like the disaster that kicked off our entire story. Both of them notice the painted rocks. Both of them pause. One of them looks at the arrow, sees it's pointing towards the other caveman's path, and, in a moment that can only be described as historic, actually stops and waits. The other caveman walks through unimpeded, gives the first caveman a nod of acknowledgement, or possibly gratitude, it's hard to tell with cavemen, and continues on his way. Once he's clear, the first caveman proceeds normally. No collision, no chaos, no flying fish, or shattered rock plates involved whatsoever. The unlucky one and the clever one watch this exchange with the kind of pride usually reserved for watching your child take their first steps. Except in this case, it's watching two random strangers not smash into each other, which, all things considered, might actually be the more impressive achievement given everything we've witnessed so far in this valley. Word spreads quickly, as it tends to do even in a world without any actual words. Other cavemen notice the painted rocks working, start using them voluntarily, and within a day, the near constant stream of collisions along the main path has dropped dramatically. It is not perfect. There are still occasional mishaps, mostly involving people who simply refuse to look where they're going regardless of how many helpful painted rocks are placed in front of them, but the overall chaos has been reduced to something resembling manageable. Naturally, this being a story about cavemen who have just barely figured out the wheel is round and fire is hot, the system cannot stay this simple and elegant forever. Success breeds ambition, and ambition, in this valley, tends to breed disaster almost immediately afterward. The unlucky one, feeling emboldened by his sudden and unexpected success as a traffic pioneer, decides the system needs to be expanded. If painted rocks work at one junction, surely painted rocks everywhere will solve every problem the valley has ever had, forever, completely. This is the kind of overconfident logic that has doomed many a great civilization, and our little valley of cavemen is not going to be the exception. He and the artist caveman spend the better part of a day painting rocks with every symbol they can think of. An arrow for go, a hand for stop, a wavy line for reasons the unlucky one cannot fully articulate but insists is important, a drawing of a mammoth with a line through it, apparently meaning no mammoths allowed, despite the fact that mammoths cannot read and have never once respected a painted rock in their entire mammoth lives. They place these rocks everywhere, along every bend in the path, outside every cave entrance, near the berry bushes, by the river, In one particularly enthusiastic moment, the unlucky one even places a rock directly in the middle of a random clearing that nobody actually walks through, just in case. The result of this overzealous expansion is, predictably, mass confusion of an entirely new kind. Where once there was simple chaos from lack of any system, now there is complex chaos from having too many symbols with unclear meanings that nobody understood in the first place. Cavemen stand in front of the wavy line rock, utterly baffled, trying to figure out if it means weight or possibly something about water since it does resemble waves, though there's no water anywhere nearby. One particularly memorable moment involves an entire family group getting stuck at a junction because the father of the group insists the mammoth rock means they should wait for a mammoth to pass, despite there being no mammoth anywhere in sight, and no mammoth having used this path, ever, in the history of the valley. His family waits with him for nearly 20 minutes before his wife finally just walks around him, shaking her head in the universal gesture of marital exasperation. The unlucky one realizes, watching this unfold, that he has once again overcomplicated a solution that was working perfectly fine when it was simple. This seems to be something of a pattern for him at this point, and one has to wonder if he'll ever learn. Though, given the general trajectory of human history that follows this story, the answer is probably not entirely. The clever one, ever the voice of reason in this partnership, suggests they scale things back. Keep the two original symbols, the stop hand and the direction arrow. Remove the wavy line, remove the mammoth rock, and definitely remove the random rock in the empty clearing that has confused precisely 0 people because nobody ever goes there, but has confused the unlucky one himself on more than one occasion when he forgets he put it there. They spend an afternoon removing the excess rocks, simplifying the system back down to its original, functional form, and by evening, the path has returned to a state of relative order, minus the overcomplication that nearly ruined everything all over again. As the sun begins to set on this eventful day, the valley finds itself in a genuinely new state. The main path, once a daily site of collisions, spilled fish, shattered rock plates, now flows with something resembling actual order. People move in predictable patterns. They pause where they need to pause. They go where they need to go. It is not perfect. It will never be perfect, because this is still a valley full of cavemen who occasionally forget which way is left, but it is measurably, undeniably better than the pandemonium that opened our story. The unlucky one stands near the original collision site, the same spot where he was flattened by an antelope-carrying caveman that very morning, and watches as 2 people approach from opposite directions, see the painted rocks, adjust their pace accordingly, and pass each other without incident. He allows himself a small, satisfied smile. It has been a long day of failed lines, collapsed rock barriers, ear-splitting hollering, unfortunate napping, but somehow, against all odds, they have actually solved the problem. Naturally, because this is the kind of world where nothing ever goes perfectly smoothly for very long, the story does not end quite there. As the light fades and most of the valley's residents head back toward their caves for the evening, a new sound begins rumbling in the distance. A sound the unlucky one recognizes immediately, having been on the receiving end of it before, and having the bruises to prove it. It is the sound of a herd, a large one, moving fast, heading directly for the exact same path they have just spent the entire day organizing. He turns to the clever one with a look of dawning horror. Their system works beautifully for cavemen. It has never once been tested against several dozen woolly mammoths who have absolutely no interest in painted rocks, arrows, or the concept of taking turns. The ground begins to shake, birds scatter from nearby trees. In the distance, a cloud of dust rises as the herd approaches, moving with all the subtlety and consideration for personal space that mammoths are famous for, which is to say, none whatsoever. The unlucky one looks at his carefully painted stop hand rock. He looks at the approaching herd. He looks back at the clever one, who has already started backing away slowly, clearly having reached the same conclusion at the exact same moment. Some problems, it turns out, cannot be solved with a well-placed rock and a hopeful arrow. The last thing we see is the unlucky one grabbing his original stick, the one he used as a traffic guard earlier that same day, holding it up high in a desperate, almost comedic attempt to signal stop to an approaching herd of mammoths that are very much not going to stop. Not for a stick, not for a rock, not for anything short of an actual cliff. Whether he moves out of the way in time, whether the mammoths trample straight through his beautifully organized traffic system without a second thought, and whether tomorrow brings an entirely new set of problems for our 2 accidental traffic engineers to solve, is a story for another day. Another invention, and undoubtedly another collision. Because if there is one thing this valley has taught us today, it is that every solution eventually creates its very own brand new problem. And somewhere out there, a caveman is always about to get flattened by something he never saw coming. And really, isn't that the most relatable thing about this entire story? We've all been there, standing in the middle of our own personal path, holding our own stick up high, hoping against hope that whatever is barreling toward us will somehow just stop in time. Sometimes it does, and sometimes, well, that's what tomorrow's chaos is for.